I want to welcome everybody. This is the first time we're getting together to discuss and listen to Il Trovatore. Right from the beginning, I encourage you to ask questions from me, from our director, pianist, and especially from the performers. I encourage that. I like interaction between the people that you're important. You are important because you listen to what we present to you and we get your feedback. And I think it's very important, especially in the world of opera, because opera personifies all the human conditions, all of them. And we here at AVA, I always like to say we're a process. We're not the final thing. Even though we give performances, we are all about the process. You hear these young, incredibly gifted singers. The first year here, you hear them the second year, you hear the progress. And it's all about that. It's all about how can we communicate with one another and arrive at something valid. So I encourage this back and forth. Now, Il Trovatore, put it in context. Verdi wrote 27, I'm always insecure with the number, 27 or 26 different operas. He has revised some of them and changed them, but excluding the revisions and the changes that he made to certain operas, his different operas, totally different, are 26, 27. This is his 18th opera, and it was premiered in Rome at 1853, the January 1853. Now, anyone that knows anything about Verdi, he was a contentious person. There was always something going on in his life. And the early 1850s was a particularly difficult time for Verdi. His mother died, his father was ill, and he had his new love in his life, Giuseppina Strepponi. They weren't married, they were living together, and this was a big scandal for a lot of people in the Catholic country, 1850s. And always when he wrote, he had commissions, and he didn't have commissions. He was at odds with the censors all the time. Because in those days, if you performed on the stage, you gave a play or an opera, you had to submit the script to censors. And the censors depended upon what part of Italy it was, what they didn't like, what the church wouldn't allow. Certainly, you could never show the killing of a statesman. You couldn't take suicide on stage. When you dealt with matters of the church, that was always iffy. And of course, Verdi being the kind of a person he was, so bold and so big, he always had things like this in his operas, and he's always being censored. So Trovatore really didn't get that much censorship. And it's one of the very few operas that he didn't get a commission to write. He wanted to write an opera, and he was seeking various opera houses, localities of where to perform it, where he would get the best result, where he would get singers he would approve of, and where he'd have his own personal rights. So he didn't get an outright commission. But nonetheless, he had a lot of problems, a lot of personal problems at that time. He had his librettist was Salvatore with a D. I don't know why, probably Spanish, appropriately enough for Il Trovatore. Salvatore Camarano was his librettist, who died before he finished writing the complete libretto. That was another problem for Verdi. But Verdi insisted for this opera, which he liked the boldness of it. And he kept writing words to his librettist. I want something bold. If you can eliminate the chorus in the beginning, I'd like that. I don't want to open up with a duet or a trio. I want it different. And the most bizarre you can get it, better I want it. I want something different. So he was very active. And also, a curious thing is, around the same time, he was writing Traviata, which is his next opera. So while he had just barely finished Trovatore, he was in his apartment there in Milan, or in Rome in this case, in Paris too, writing Traviata. So those three operas, or Rigoletto, first of his middle period, trovatore, the second one, and traviata, the third one. They generally refer that to the changing point in Verdi's writing where it became more dramatically plausible, and which is another point which I have to bring up. When I grew up, going to see trovatore was, as Caruso would say, all you need for trovatore are the 4 or 5 greatest voices in the world. That's all you need. Okay, right. And you'll hear the beginnings of these sounds with these young talented people. But we always said, well, what is this all about, this trovatore? This gypsy woman, which is another thing he had to change. He had the word witch. You couldn't use that on the stage, so he changed it to gypsy. But anyway, we'd say, this woman, her mother got burned at the stake, and then the daughter mistakenly pulls up the wrong baby, throws her own baby into the fire. This is impossible, this is ridiculous. Well, I want to tell you what goes on in the world today. It doesn't sound ridiculous to me at all. Burned at the stake, even with the witches that we had. Right. In New England, America, we've experienced that. And it doesn't sound so implausible to me to, in the height of delirium, mistakenly choose the wrong child and throw him into the fire. So it's not so far-fetched, really. All right, before we get on, a great deal of trovatore to manage these heightened emotions and the grandeur of the opera. Of course, how much grandeur can you give here? You need a really fine collaborator. And I'm, like in AVA, is very fortunate to have Michael Scarola. Now, Michael, as a director, was here once before when we did Anna Bolena. I don't know when it was, Michael, I've forgotten. 2000, that long ago. Yeah, which was a highly successful production, and that was our first introduction to Michael. He has really, I could read from his bio, but let me tell you, he has a really wonderful bio. There's no mistake in the fact that he knows what he's doing. And he not only does he know what he's doing, he knows the scores, he knows the works. Now that might sound a little bit silly to say a director knows the work. Of course he knows that. No. If you've been around as long as I have worked with many directors who don't know the words. So you're directing somebody, telling them where to go on this word and that word and what to do, and thinking, this person doesn't know these words. Well, Michael is not at all that way. He's presently on the directorial staff at LA Opera. He's worked the usual great places like Santa Fe. He's directed in Santa Fe. And on the Met, he's been at the Met for several years. Chicago. And I read in his bio that he did a couple of works I'd love to do. One of them is Der Vampire. I would love to do that work. And also Lady Macbeth, the Shostakovich Lady Macbeth, correct, another great work. Do you do Cardiac by Hindemith?
I haven't, and I'd love to.
Yeah, I would too.
Let's talk about it.
Well, let's talk to Kevin McDowell about it. I would like to talk to Kevin McDowell to do Cardiac. But he's a fine director, and he's especially good with young people. He promotes them to think and to go out and experiment and take chances, but he knows the logistics of things too. So we're very fortunate, and Michael, I'd love for you to come up and say something.
Sure. Is this on?
Yes.
First, I just want to say how excited and thrilled I am to be back at AVA for the first time in 9 years. In all fairness, Maestro and Kevin did invite me back in 2012, but I was literally getting on a plane when the phone call came in from my agent asking if I could do Barbara of Seville for them while I was heading to Chicago to make my debut as an associate director there, so I had to say no, which killed me. I thought, I'll never be invited back now. So I was thrilled when I got the phone call to come in and do this Trovatore. Hopefully not too many of you were here for the speech back in 2008 that I gave, but I just have to say that AVA holds a very, very special place in my heart. When I was a young, aspiring opera singer some 35 years ago, AVA was on the top of my list of places to come and study. I drove, excuse me, sinus stuff, allergies. I drove in from New York City. It took me a half hour to find a parking spot. I'm sure you're all quite used to that in the area. And I was all excited, and I came in here and I gave the best audition I could give. I wasn't accepted. So when some 25 years passes and I get a phone call to come here and direct, it kind of, in a strange way, felt like it had come full circle for me. And frankly, I'm glad I came in as a director and not as a singer. Seeing what these people have to go through and how they are, like, let me explain that. In preparation for getting them ready to go out and have careers. The training that they get here, they are undoubtedly pushed very hard, but the truth of the matter is that you get through AVA, you can handle anything that you're going to get thrown out in the real opera world, whatever that is. So this is a very, very special place. So to be able to come back and direct what maybe I shouldn't admit is my first trovatore, but it is. Good. All right. So we really kind of all came in on ground zero with this one. It was fascinating when I got the phone call, because at first I was incredibly excited about the opportunity to come back to AVA, and then I remembered why I had kind of avoided trovatore for all those years. It is an incredibly convoluted opera, and it's laden with a lot of history and a lot of melodrama. And this was something that I spoke to the students about the very, very first day. A whole bunch of us got to see the Marx Brothers movie, A Night at the Opera, last week, that was set up here in the school. And you could actually, even back in the 30s, you could get a sense of how much melodrama was in this piece. And it was one of the big things that I wanted to avoid. My process in working on a new opera to direct, I've assistant directed on the piece, but I've never directed it before. The very, very first thing I do is I sit and I translate. Very, very detailed translating. My Italian's good, it's not perfect, so I translate every single word in the score to make sure that I know what I'm doing when I walk into the rehearsal room. And I thought, you know what? I'm gonna finally, truly understand the details of this unbelievably convoluted piece. I was more confused when I finished translated than when I started. But that's kind of what gave me the impetus to how to direct the piece. And as I was saying, the very first day at our production presentation, before we had our first rehearsal, I spoke to the cast that what I wanted to do was make this piece very dramatic. I wanted to be careful about not moving over into the, as I call it, silent film school acting, which can happen very, very easily in this piece. I wanted to actually dig into these characters and their emotions. And I think we've worked really, really hard on that over the past few weeks. We got the piece on its feet very quickly. We actually staged the whole piece in 6 days. And then this, which has been great, because this last week and a half, we've just been taking time detailing every single scene and just finding all the great intricacies in the piece. And the other thing that I wanted to do was, in making it very dramatic, is making it very physical. So there are some amazing sword fights in the show. There's oh God, what's all the violence we do in the show? We've got hair pulling, there's pushing, there's slapping, there's slashing of arms. I'm not giving away the end of the opera, and don't anybody say a word. No spoilers. But let's just say the ending is just ever so slightly different. But I think what we have created, and I have to say how proud I am to have created the show with all of these people here. And I do mean we created it together as a team. I try to set things up. I get everybody where they need to be on stage so we're not walking into each other, because it's really easy to fall off here. It's really tiny up there. So, once we get all of that out of the way, we were really able to do a lot of great detailing on the show, and I hope that will come through. At the same time, we also have to be very respectful of the music. So you will see there will be times where the singers will just stand or sit and sing their arias. Because for me, sometimes you just have to trust the composer and the text and let the singer, and I mean this in the best way possible, let the singer do all the work. Me telling them to move around the stage is just going to get in the way and will take away from what they're able to bring to their role. So I hope we've found the balance in all of that. So I'm excited. I have to say, doing my first trovatore here has made me feel confident enough about the piece, and a lot of that just has to do with what I've learned from all of you these past few weeks, that like I could actually go out and do this somewhere else now. So thank you for the opportunity to allow me to figure it out here. That's
we're thrilled to have
very
you.
Special. So
We're lucky to have you.
thank you. I feel very, very privileged to be here. So I hope you'll enjoy.
Yes, I think we should
what
get
we're
on to
gonna do
some
now.
music making.
Great. Thank you so much.
Are you going to do it on?